Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and this is the Sharks weekly recap of Week 4. The Sharks finally returned home for their first lengthy homestand of the season, in which they will find themselves playing 4 games at SAP Center. 3 of them, all 3 coming this week against Eastern Conference opponents, while 2 of those Eastern Conference opponents they will not see any more times this season, unless of course the 2 teams meet in a Stanley Cup Finals match. Their first game of the week coming Tuesday night against the New York Rangers. They had lost earlier this season against the Rangers 3-2 in overtime, and it once again required an overtime to end this game. The Sharks were expected to come out somewhat slow, as this was their first game back from a 3-game road trip, and that's exactly what happened. As the Rangers dominated the first period, the Sharks found themselves quite lucky to escape from that first with a 1-1 tie. The Sharks did improve as the game went on, and in the third period, each time the Rangers were able to take the lead, which was a couple of times, the Sharks both times were able to come back, including a Tomas Hertl goal at the 11th hour in the last couple of seconds of the game to force the overtime. While the Sharks were unable to score in the 3-on-3 overtime, they found themselves in the shootout, in which they were once again unable to score there either, now 0 for 6 on shootout attempts. Martin Jones led in a goal to Kevin Shattenkirk, and the Sharks dropped their season series to the Rangers 0-2, or I guess I could say 0-0-2. The Sharks then hosted the Columbus Blue Jackets on Thursday, expecting a much better performance from their players, as the Sharks would be more comfortable now back in San Jose, California. But instead, they were greeted with a mediocre performance from all the players, including their goaltender Aaron Dell, who was playing this one. Sergei Bobrovsky was extremely strong for the Blue Jackets team, who had previously had a disappointing loss to the Detroit Red Wings and were now starting their California road trip in San Jose, as Aaron Dell found himself outdueled by the 2-time Vezina winning goaltender, and the Sharks dropped in regulation, ruining their points streak of 6 straight games, 4-1 to the Blue Jackets. They then hosted the Philadelphia Flyers on Saturday. The Flyers coming into their 3rd game of their California road trip, 3rd and final game after having defeated both the Kings and the Ducks. The Sharks, who had previously crushed the Flyers 8-2 earlier on this season, were certainly expecting a much stronger performance from the Flyers this time around. And early on, the Flyers looked to be doing that, as they got an early goal past Martin Jones on a well-executed 3-on-2 play. However, the Sharks were not to be deterred, as they were able to come back from a 1-goal deficit 3 separate times in this game to force the overtime. Unlike the game earlier this week, though, the Sharks were able to end it in the 3-on-3 period, and very early on, and at just 13 seconds in, with Timo Meier's 2nd overtime game-winning goal of the season. And so the Sharks were able to collect 3 of a possible 6 points in what was a technically average but still somewhat disappointing with the quality of competition that the Sharks faced off this week. In terms of point scoring, Timo Meier led the way for the Sharks with 4 points this week, putting his total up to 16, including 3 goals, which put his goal total up to 11, tying him for first in the league, among a couple of other very fantastic players like Nathan MacKinnon and Patrick Kane. Scoring 3 points was Burns, LeBanc, and Couture. In the case of Burns and LeBanc, they got a goal and 2 assists, while Couture managed to put up 3 assists. Burns and Couture's point totals jumped up to 16 to join themselves in a 3-way tie for first place on the Sharks in terms of points with the aforementioned Meier, as well as LeBanc's point total jumped up to 10 points. Then Tomas Hertl also put up a goal and an assist, getting his point total up to 14, and Vlasic, the only other Shark with more than a single point this week, got 2 assists to put his point total up to 5. News of the week, Joe Thornton scored his first goal of the season and his first goal in around 9 months, and so this should be some nice confidence for Joe Thornton, whose first 4 games back, or first 2 games I guess I could say, back from his leg infection did not go too well. Thornton found himself on the third line halfway through the Flyers-Sharks game, and it looks like going into next week he might remain there. Next is a defense and goaltending issue for the Sharks. This, after the Flyers game, marked the 6th straight game in which the Sharks gave up at least 3 goals. 3 goals against the Flyers, 3 goals against the Rangers if you don't count the shootout winner, as well as 3 goals against the Blue Jackets if you don't count the empty net. And this has been an issue for the Sharks this season, as it also goes back to the past week, as I said, 6 in a row. And if you look at the Sharks, were expected to have one of the better, at least, goaltending tandems in the league, as well as one of, if not the best, defensive core coming into this season. And if you look at how the Sharks were defensively last season, I think giving up 2 or less goals in about half of their games, this has not been a good defensive year for them, and it hasn't necessarily only been on fault of Jones and Dell, but has also been on the fault of the defense, who have just had one too many massive breakdowns in the defensive zone. Next is the injury to Tomas Hertl, as he sustained a concussion, as it has now been confirmed, against the Philadelphia Flyers. DeBoer is saying that he is day-to-day, although with DeBoer that could mean he's back in the next couple of games, or it will take a couple of weeks. However, a concussion, a head injury, is one of the most unpredictable injuries in all of hockey, and as such, to a couple of weeks or a couple of days can easily turn into a couple of months, and the Sharks certainly are not hoping that that will be the case, as Hertl has been one of, if not the best forward for them this season, and has been on their current best line. They will now have to scrap that line, find a new line combination, as Tomas Hertl, a player who had been plagued with injuries during his short NHL season, once again sits on the sidelines. Class dismissed.